Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good afternoon to everybody. With the permission of Dr. Saiqa, Dr. Sarfraz, and the rest of my colleagues, I would like to go ahead and share my slides with you. And I'm really, really happy and thrilled to be with all of you. I'm proud to see a university that is specifically designed for all my sisters. And obviously, this is very, very important for all of you to continue your education and do it in such a way where it's safe and healthy. And we want all of you to be great leaders in society, regardless of where you work. So that's why I'm happy to be here and be part of this session. It's great to see so many of you. Now, our agenda for today is to talk a little bit about what happens every single day in society. More specifically, I want to talk about what conflict is, and to give you some suggestions on how to resolve conflict issues. And I want to also talk about bullying and harassment that takes place between teammates and colleagues oftentimes. And more importantly, last, we'll talk about mobbing. What does workplace mobbing actually look like? And I want to offer the skills of assertiveness for all of you to be a little bit more assertive both at home and at work at all times. So the more you do this, the more likely you'll become more assertive in every element of your workplace as well as home life. So we need you to be more assertive, and we'll define what assertiveness is and also how to develop these skills. So when it comes to workplace issues, we know that the workplace is still dominated by males, right? So most leadership positions are actually acquired by men, which means we tend to be a little bit more aggressive from childhood. So we get a lot of practice at it. But obviously, aggressiveness is not a good thing for society. So we as men, as well as all women, need to be a little bit more assertive. We need to have diversity in the workplace. So diversity, when it's managed effectively, it can bring about improvements both in productivity as well as competitiveness. So we want our departments, we want our organizations, we want our society to be competitive. So Pakistan, with over 220 million people, 50% of the population is likely to be women. So if that 50% of the population is competitive and productive, that means the economy will be productive as a nation, right? So that's the goal. So diversity, especially differences of opinion in disagreements, can actually sometimes lead to conflict, to harassment, and sometimes even abuse, which is not good. So it needs to be managed. So what is conflict? Conflict is usually defined as the struggle that results when two or more people perceive a difference or some sort of incompatibility in their interests, in their values, in their goals within the department or between two individuals, or even within the organization. What is reality is that every interaction, every communication has the opportunity for conflict. We know that some conflict is good actually for team performance. However, too much conflict tends to cause too much time being wasted fighting with each other, harassing each other, calling each other names, bullying each other. And unfortunately, sometimes it can get very physical, both in the classroom as well as in the boardroom. So we need conflict management so conflicts can be functional. Conflict management is the process of dealing with conflict in a very effective manner. In other words, conflict management is about functional conflict management, not dysfunctional conflict management. Conflict among colleagues and coworkers are likely to happen every single day. So healthy or functional conflict can be beneficial to creativity as well as to productivity. So it's a result of all of us pushing each other, questioning each other, that we can be more innovative in the workplace. And we need that workplace innovation. We need that productivity. We also need employees to be happy, to be productive, to be satisfied with what they do. Unfortunately, not all conflict can be resolved in a productive manner. So sinister conflict using harassment, using bullying, using mobbing behaviors toward other individuals in our departments can amount to what is known as psychological terrorism. Psychological terrorism in distressful anxiety for the victim. So we know that cannot lead to productivity, that cannot lead to happy employees. So we need to avoid sinister conflicts. In order to avoid that, we need to know what is the root cause of the problem. Albert Einstein once mentioned that the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. So we need to understand what the problem is and deal with the root cause of the problem. Sometimes we need to change our paradigms. We need to change our point of view or how we see things through new knowledge, through diversity, through education, to get ourselves out of the problems we behaved ourselves into. So again, diversity sometimes can be very helpful in this area. But as I mentioned before, you see myself and my colleagues here at the SciComm conference in Lahore in 2010, many of the top positions, many of the panels, even in the public sector, seem to be dominated by men. So we need more female diversity as well. But even within men, there can be conflict, and within women, there can be conflict. So understanding the root causes helps us to deal with the real problem. One of the problems is obviously when conflicts get into abuse. So what is abusive or intimidating behavior? Generally, abusive or intimidating behavior describes those actions that are physical threats, false accusations, harassment of our colleagues, coworkers, even superiors in the workplace, or even yelling and screaming at other individuals. All of these are unprofessional, but sometimes they're not necessarily illegal according to the policies of the corporation or the government. So we need to understand how to avoid such unprofessional behaviors in the workplace, despite the fact that they may not always be illegal. So the meaning of abusive and intimidating can vary from person to person, from environment to environment, from culture to culture, from society to society. So that should be noted, but nonetheless, unprofessional behavior is obviously unprofessional. We need to eliminate it. One of those unprofessional behaviors is harassment that is persistent. Harassment can lead to what is known as hostile work environment. So according to legal language and terminology, at least in the United States, hostile work environment happens when we are repeatedly harassing somebody. So from a legal point of view, an employee does not need to prove that harassment seriously affected his or her psychological well-being, or that it even caused an injury to him or her. So a decisive legal issue is whether the conduct interfered with the worker's performance in the department, in the organization. If the performance of an employee was affected because of the ongoing harassment, that means there was a hostile work environment in that company, that manager, that department can be sued by the victim. So we also need to talk about a hostile learning environment. Think about the classroom where you and I are learning on a regular basis. So a hostile learning environment can be described as a situation where inappropriate remarks consistently take place and it is not corrected by the teacher, by the trainer, by the facilitator, by the manager in that environment when it happens. So this would be a situation where insensitive and inappropriate remarks should be addressed publicly by the teacher, by the manager, so everyone understands that that is not appropriate in the classroom. That is not appropriate in the department. That is not appropriate in any professional setting. Right. And I usually recommend that managers and teachers address these types of inappropriate harassment remarks publicly. When I was a corporate manager, obviously we trained managers to address productivity issues or deficiency of individual employees privately. But when it comes to harassment issues, inappropriate remarks taking place, you have to address it publicly. This way, everybody who's present, they know that you do not tolerate that type of unprofessional behavior in the classroom or in the workplace. Think about your college, for example, the Government College of Women University in Faisalabad. I saw your mission statement. The mission of the Department of Public Administration is that it strives to meet the needs of current and future public managers. It aims to provide educational opportunities that enable them to become ethical, skillful, creative, and inspirational leaders, and to give practicing professionals a learning environment that supports, develops, and assists them in enhancing their skills and professionalism. So conflict management, dealing with harassment issues, dealing with bullying, dealing with workplace mobbing are all skills that you need in the workplace. And I'm glad to see that your university is actually emphasizing this as part of the curriculum. So it's great to see that Professor Sultana said that this would be a very relevant session for all of you in today's webinar. So I'm glad to discuss this topic with each and every one of you. A hostile work environment from a legal point of view has 3 criteria that must be met in order for the victim to sue the organization. In other words, the conduct of the person must be unwelcome. It must be severe, pervasive, and regarded by the employee as so hostile or offensive as to alter his or her condition of employment. In other words, the employee does not want to come to work because of this hostility or this harassment. Number 3 would be that a reasonable person would find this behavior, this conduct hostile or offensive. So if these 3 elements are met, that means your organization can be sued by the victim, and the organization would lose a very costly lawsuit, which is not good, obviously, for the environment or the economic performance of the corporation. At my university, the university actually addresses sexual harassment. So we're required, for example, to put this statement that you see on the screen in our syllabi, so students get to see how intolerant the university is of any form of harassment in the workplace, more specifically sexual harassment that seems to take place in the classroom. So as an organization, we need to take severe steps to make sure everybody understands that certain behaviors will not be tolerated in the classroom, in the workplace, or in the department. Now, how do we deal with day-to-day conflicts? Oftentimes, somebody will say something negative about you. Somebody will say something like, oh, you're not qualified for this position, or, oh, women don't belong in management. So that is inappropriate. That is obviously sometimes offensive. Therefore, we need to develop the skill of talking with that person immediately as it happens. If you're offended, what can you do to immediately address the situation in a respectful, polite, and professional manner? I have emphasized to my students, as well as to corporate managers when I provided training, that they can use what is known as the 4F model. So the 4F model basically focuses on facts, feelings, future expectations, and following up. So and when somebody says that you do not belong in management because you're too young, you're too old, you're too female, or you don't speak the language properly, et cetera, whatever the cause or the reason might be, you need to let them know what they said, exactly the way they said it. You need to share your feelings, and you need to let them know what the expectations are when they are interacting with you. So if you're a manager, you also need to follow up. On the other hand, if the person continues to harass you, continues to make inappropriate statements to you, you can follow up with the human resource department. In other words, you can report it to your manager or to the human resource department so they can discipline the employee and or terminate the employee depending on what he or she said and what the form of harassment, actually. So how can you use this conflict resolution model of 4F model in any workplace? Again, you can make a statement something like this. So I'll give you an example. Somebody says that women don't belong in the workplace. So you can just simply say, when you make comments like that about women, I feel angry and I feel disappointed because that is not true. Women do belong in the workplace. Women can be great leaders, great managers, great politicians when given the opportunity. So please don't make comments like that again. See, this statement uses the facts of what was said, your feelings. You're sharing your feelings, not your thoughts, because you don't want to escalate the problem. You want to basically solve the problem. And researchers say use I messages instead of you messages. So, and then you basically mention your future expectations. Please don't make comments like that in the workplace, because I don't want anybody else to be offended, and I want us to all work together professionally. So it uses the first 3 F's, and then if it is repeated, you follow up by going to your manager or human resource department, and hopefully then it will be definitely solved. So my recommendation is, instead of walking away and being angry when somebody calls you stupid or dumb, or says that you cannot do something, and they're derogatory or they're bullying you or they're harassing you, by using certain sentences, you can use the 4F model to immediately address the issue in a professional way. So I would like for you to memorize this statement when you make comments like that about blank. I feel angry and disappointed because blank. It is not true. So please don't make comments like that in the workplace, because it is against our code of conduct. It is against the organization's level of professionalism. So let us avoid it. Can you do that for me, please? So again, if you make this statement in short 30 seconds, hopefully it resolves the issue without you being angry. If you don't resolve it immediately, what happens is you go home, you're angry, you're upset, and you cannot sleep well, and you say, well, next time I'm going to deal with this, and I'm going to tell that person. So only makes you more angry. Instead of getting more angry, just use the 4F model. Persistent conflicts that are not managed, harassing behaviors, and bullying can create a hostile work environment, which is illegal in most countries, perhaps including in your organization and in your institution. Workplace bullying is strongly associated with sleep disturbances, as well as depression, fatigue, increased sick days, and even stomach problems at a physiological level. Bullying can be any abusive behavior that takes the method of verbal abuse, threats, humiliation, intimidation, or interference that prevents the target from getting work done in a timely manner. So that is a definition of bullying from the Workplace Bullying Institute that was provided to all of us to see and discuss and talk about. In most instances, when a person mentions the word bullying, we tend to think of a person who appears really tough and pushy, and he or she yells or screams. However, workplace mobbing is a little bit different than bullying, at least in nature or how it appears. So workplace mobbing can take place very silently and collectively, without somebody being pushy, without somebody threatening a person. So we need to be aware of both bullying as well as workplace mobbing that takes place silently. Workplace mobbing is the act of bullying others in the work environment collectively or persistently. And these types of behaviors are always negative, they're continuous, and they tend to intensify over time. Mobbing is not a conflict that occurs one single incident, and it can have many forms and types. Mobbing and workplace bullying do include professional, emotional, verbal, and physical abuses that take place, which obviously are very negative. Workplace mobbing is a form of group bullying, which isolates one person and causes him or her humiliation and psychological abuse, which not only affects productivity in the department, but it also influences the employee's overall health, as well as the morale of other teammates in the department or in the team. Mobbing can result in a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and low work performance, and even resignation, which obviously makes it very difficult for you to recruit new people, because people don't want to work in a department where the manager, the employees, or the senior people are bossy and bullying individuals. What are some examples of workplace mobbing? What do they look like? Well, this list basically gives you a number of items. It can be something like disrespect, gossip, which happens oftentimes, unfortunately, stonewalling, excluding somebody, ignoring somebody, humiliating somebody, screaming, making derogatory or biased or discriminatory statements based on the way a person looks, based on his or her religious values, based on his or her outfit or clothing, and even setting impossible deadlines that will set up the target for failure. If you consistently give people too much work to do and they cannot get it done in a day or in a week, that means they will fail. So that is a form of workplace mobbing, which needs to be addressed professionally. So there are many examples of mobbing, and human resource professionals, managers, team leaders should be aware of mobbing in the workplace and take proactive and reactive steps to foster a healthy work environment, a healthy learning environment for every person in your department. According to a survey, 68% of harassment or abusive cases involve women-on-women bullying. So just because there are no men in the department or in the team does not mean bullying does not take place. Bullying takes place between men, it takes place between women, and in obviously diverse environments or teams. Mobbers create a harassing atmosphere to make the workplace so uncomfortable that the targeted victim must remove him or herself from the department. That's where the resignations, the quitting happens. And unfortunately, the mobber, the person who is bullying everybody, he or she stays and only gets to bully other people because we did not report it, we did not deal with it, and other people become victims as well. So bullying and mobbing can occur more often in companies and in departments that do not regularly and fairly evaluate performance in individual behavior. That's why it's so important to train managers how to assess performance objectively on a periodic basis. The company tolerates an employee who is unpleasant to work with, does not follow office policies, or who fails to complete his or her work. Other employees become resentful. So this can lead to the mobbing of the underperforming or disliked employee, and office morale has likely decreased significantly by the time the workers take matters into their own hands. So morale suffers when the managers are not being objective when they are assessing people's performance. So inappropriate remarks should be addressed immediately and professionally. The most common form of workplace mobbing includes spreading of malicious gossip that is aimed to ridicule and bully the victim in the department or in the organization to a point where he or she eventually leaves. So mobbing can be downward, upward, inward, and horizontal. So there are many different forms of mobbing that take place. The goal for you and I is to make sure none of it takes place in the workplace. So what is inward mobbing? In certain industries like the education or healthcare, bullying can be inward. In other words, it can be initiated by students, by customers, by clients, by vendors, patients, or even the patient's families as they develop a relationship over time. And the employee may feel helpless as the patient exudes power over them. So when you're a manager, make sure customers do not abuse your employees. It is your job to address the abusive or bullying of customers professionally because nobody is allowed to abuse you or your employees. So when you're working and serving as managers or HR professionals, keep in mind that you will face the challenge of having to deal with workplace conflict, bullying, and mobbing. Always behave rationally and professionally by being objective in following the department and the organization's policies and guidelines to make sure you have a healthy work environment for all of your employees. Mobbing exists across the globe. So it's not just an American problem or a European problem or a Pakistani problem. It exists everywhere, with 10 to 15% of American workers considering themselves as victims of bullying. Approximately 1 in 3 employees are bullied at their jobs, with women being the most common target. So unfortunately, this happens quite often in the United States, at least based on data that I've seen and based on personal anecdotes of employees to women, and women often ignore it, do not address it, and unfortunately, the bullying continues. So much of this bullying goes unreported, which is not good for the organization. Some people argue that reporting the issue of mobbing to Human Resource Department is a dangerous move because the HR department, as an instrument of the company, they will almost always defend the perpetrator, which happens to be the manager usually, over the target, and it will often either knowingly or unwittingly escalate mobbing. Also, speaking directly with a perpetrator can often escalate the mobbing process because it becomes more subtle and takes the form of gaslighting or manipulating the person psychologically by questioning their sanity. So proceed cautiously based on what is appropriate at any given time, because you don't want to obviously create too much anxiety for yourself, but do report it professionally and hopefully it gets solved. If it does not, unfortunately, you'll eventually leave the organization, which is not good for the organization. Australia, for example, calls about workplace bullying have increased by 70% in 3 years. Reports show that workplace mobbing rate of nearly 50% in the United States, 4% in Italy, and 5 to 10% in Europe. So many countries are suffering from workplace bullying and mobbing. We know that workplace bullying is harmful to the company, to the overall environment, and research has shown that the tendency is rising, with at least 30% of bullying considered to be mobbing. So in other words, the bullying does escalate to mobbing, which is more anxiety producing and more stressful because sometimes it includes more than one person. In Thailand, for example, workplace bullying is related to burnout, to low job satisfaction, and leaving early the nursing profession based on the research that was done in 2017. 67 new nurses reported some form of bullying over the past 6 months in their hospital. And 73% of them indicated that a colleague was the perpetrator. So it was not necessarily the boss. New nurses perceived workplace bullying from their seniors as being a process of adjusting to the organization's culture. They concluded that a more complex and stressful nursing environment was more likely to lead to workplace bullying. But I want you to know, despite the research here with the Thai nurses, workplace bullying is never, ever professional. Therefore, it should not be allowed from senior employees, from managers, from anyone in the organization. So it must be dealt with accordingly and immediately in a professional manner. About 45% of the targeted individuals suffer stress-related health problems. If you don't address bullying and mobbing in the workplace, it impacts you. So that is not good for you. Therefore, you need to learn the skills of addressing this immediately and professionally. Workplace bullying or mobbing has doubled in the last decade. At least 1 in 10 people will experience some form of mobbing and harassment. And 75% of people surveyed mentioned that they had been impacted by workplace mobbing. Unfortunately, you and I will see mobbing in the workplace in various stages of our careers in the workplace. The 75% of employees surveyed said that they had been affected by bullying either as a target or some cases as a witness where other people were being bullied and mobbed. So workplace mobbing is increasing in every workplace. Usually it's because of jealousy, because of maintaining status quo. It's because of pushing the star employees out, or difficult or underperforming employees out of your department or your team. It's about driving out whistleblowers in some cases. In some cases, it could be because of personal reasons. Regardless of the reason, we need to deal with it effectively. So we need to have some policies to deal with workplace mobbing at the department level, at the organization level, and sometimes at the professional level. In all cases, these are some suggestions for dealing with workplace mobbing. In all cases, remain watchful for potential mobbing encounters in behaviors. Immediately address any unprofessional and inappropriate behaviors. Keep a record and document every incident. Remind everyone in the organization what the expectation is in dealing with these types of issues. Maintain an open door in confidentiality policy. Practice having an unbiased attitude and disposition in the workplace. Know your expert or designated HR professional when coaching is needed. And above all, maintain an inclusive work environment at all times, so people feel included in the decisions and they can report problems to you, to the managers in the department, and to the leaders in human resource department, or in the organization overall. Putting an anti-bullying policy into place, as well as processes that treat victims as valued employees who deserve support and protection rather than as nuisances, can go a long way toward improving office culture and reducing incidents of bullying and mobbing. So when you put a policy in place, make sure you communicate the policy to everyone on a regular or periodic basis. In other words, integrate the policy into your training program. Be a cultural ally. When you see inappropriate things taking place, address it immediately using perhaps the 4F model. Being a cultural ally refers to those individuals, those professionals, those managers and leaders who intervene or interrupt as needed to stop mistreatment, to stop injustice from occurring to innocent persons in their vicinity. So if the person does not address unprofessional bullying and harassment and mobbing, you can intervene by asking the person not to continue with this unprofessional behavior. At my university, we have regular conferences, and sometimes these issues are brought up to students, to staff, and to the university faculty. So one of the conferences I attended in 2018, it was called the NSU Help Fair. This sign was present, and you can see here a lawyer who's actually helping students and faculty address the issue. The sign says, when a behavior is offensive, derogatory, inappropriate, harassing, pressuring, invasive, intimidating, threatening, isolating, forceful, violent, assaulting, you intervene in a respectful and professional manner. Otherwise, it will continue, which is not good for you. It's not good for any of your colleagues in the environment. It's certainly not good for the organization, because they're going to lose good employees in the long term. So speak against bullying and harassment. Systematic bullying or systemic bullying, harassment, and social injustice against women have to be eradicated. It has to be eradicated against any individual. Business has a critical role to play in creating an equitable society, which is intolerant of any form of injustice that takes place in the workplace. Leaders must affirm their commitment to zero tolerance of bullying colleagues, or bullying customers, or bullying suppliers and vendors, or students bullying other students. So organizations need to take this opportunity to affirm their zero tolerance policy toward bullying or mobbing behaviors, and they need to outline procedures in place to report, to review, and to act on evidence of harassment among their employees in the workplace or at the institution in general. So individually, I don't want you to feel like diamond in dirt. In other words, you have a lot of value, but sometimes other people make you feel like you do not belong, you don't have much value, or you're not very good at your job. I don't want you to feel like diamond in the dirt. That's why I recommend you develop your assertiveness skills. So speak assertively and respectfully, and be inclusive. In other words, listen to diverse views. I like, for example, in this photo here, I see Nancy Pelosi, who was our congressional leader, and she's the only female, it looks like, among all these men in the room, and she's addressing the president of the United States, telling him that the policies are not working. So you need to develop professional skills, just like Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, to be able to speak your mind despite the fact that you're among so many domineering, perhaps, individuals who disagree with you. You need to speak your mind and you can sleep better at night. So what is assertiveness? It's a communication style in a tool you can develop and use when needed. It's your ability to express your feelings, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your opinions openly in a way that respects the opinions, feelings, thoughts of other people around you. So be yourself and be all that you can be by standing confidently tall in any situation, by being assertive, by using assertiveness statements. So assertiveness can be learned. It's a skill, just like listening, just like playing soccer, playing volleyball, or coaching others or mentoring others. So I don't want you to feel like a fish out of the water. I want you to be assertive and demand other people respect you. As a matter of fact, Vicky Corral explains that assertiveness can help increase your confidence and decrease your stress level. So we would like for you to be confident individuals as you graduate from your faculty, from your university, and work in the public sector or private sector. She also mentions that assertiveness can be used both at home as well as in the workplace. She says that when you use qualifiers like but, is that okay? You decrease the importance of your opinion. And this happens quite often, as a matter of fact, to those of us who are born and raised in Asia. Both men and women tend to use qualifiers, but it happens more to women. So be mindful of your language. If you tell somebody, let us do this, but then you ask, is that okay? That is a qualifier. So if you recommend something, make the recommendation, but don't obviously use the qualifier because it decreases the importance of what you just said. 5 phrases for becoming assertive, according to Vicky Corral. So things like, I'm not prepared to support that idea. In the workplace, if somebody says something that you don't agree with, just say, I'm not prepared to support that idea. When you interrupt me, I feel angry. Number 3, you have come home late the past few nights. I'm concerned. So this is a way of basically addressing the issue in a professional, in assertive manner, without being angry, without being abusive, without bullying others. Number 4, I see that you are frustrated. I understand your reaction. Let us talk again tomorrow. Especially when people are angry and upset. There's no reason to continue the discussion at that time because emotions are involved. So you can make an appointment for tomorrow to discuss the issue in a professional and respectful manner. Number 5, she says, here is my receipt. I would like to return this smartphone and get my money back because this phone is not working properly. So again, you don't have to be combative. You don't have to bully others. You don't have to be unprofessional. You can simply use these phrases over and over again. So it becomes a normal part of your conversation with other individuals. You can also learn to say no. Saying no sets limits on other people's demands for your time, especially when it conflicts with your own needs. You can acknowledge the other person's request by repeating it back. Explain your reason for declining and then say, no, I cannot agree with this statement. And if appropriate, suggest an alternative where both of your needs can be met. So these are some of the skills that you can use for becoming a little bit more assertive in the workplace and at home. I would like to show you a short video now with the permission of my colleagues, so you can hear it from another professional in the workplace.
Sneha, I wonder if you can help me. I want to improve my assertiveness, particularly in saying no to people when they make unreasonable requests of me.
Okay, is there a particular area that you find difficult in saying no?
As an example, sometimes I'm asked to stay late by my boss, in fact quite often, and if I have something else on, even though it's an important thing that I need to go to, I find it difficult to say no to my boss.
And you end up staying?
Yes.
And is it part of your work contract to work till late?
No, absolutely not. My hours are 9 till 5:30.
Okay. Do you find it difficult to say no generally?
I think it's some situations more than others.
Okay, because I have come across people who are not even able to say no if they find it really difficult for it to even come out of their mouth. So perhaps we could have a few practice tries.
Sure, I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah. Okay, all you need to do is just say no. Okay. You can laugh and giggle, that's fine. Laura, can you make me a cup of tea, please?
No.
Laura, can you get my dry cleaning from the shops, please?
No.
Laura, can you jump up and down 10 times?
No.
Okay, so do you see how over practice your voice level changed? You were much more strong and convincing in your voice tone. So if you could look in front of the mirror and just practice saying no, that would be a great start.
Okay.
Okay, so coming back to your situation, you find it difficult to say no to your manager. Can you give me one specific example when you were quite resentful about not saying no?
Sure, it wasn't very long ago actually. I was asked to stay late on a Friday night and I had a family member's birthday party that night.
Okay.
There was a report that my manager needed to help me finish the report with her, and I ended up staying even though it meant that I missed the beginning of the party.
So, and if you hadn't stayed, what would be the consequence of you not staying?
She would have struggled to get the report done in time, and I would have felt that I had let her down.
Okay. Fundamentally, the report was her responsibility.
That's right.
Okay, so you didn't have to stay behind.
No.
Okay. There are 3 techniques to consider when you're saying no. Start off occasionally, not all the time, by just saying no, I'm not able to, and then finish off with whatever the request has been made. In relation to your manager, the techniques are, if she makes a request to you, you would repeat what she'd asked you to do, have an and in between, and then finish off with the explanation.
Could you give me an example?
So for instance, if she'd said to you, Laura, can you stay behind till 8:30 this evening? What you would say is, no, I'm not able to stay behind till 8:30 this evening because I have an important party to go to. And then she'd say, it's really important that we complete this report, and you would respond back by saying, I know it's really important for us to complete this report, and that's where the and comes in, I have a very special party I need to go to this evening.
So it's almost like I'd want to put a but where you're saying that I have to put the and.
Yeah, the and makes it flow better, whereas the but, you're contradicting yourself. And if you're contradicting yourself, it means that as your manager, it gives me permission to contradict what you want to do.
Okay, that's interesting.
So should we have a practice run?
Sure.
So basically, what you're doing is you're repeating what I'm saying, using the word and then finishing off with the last line, and I have a very important party to go to.
Okay.
And that technique is called the broken record technique. So you just keep repeating it over and over to me. Okay. Let's have a practice run, and then in between we'll do pauses, and then I'll give you some feedback as well.
Okay.
Okay. Laura, this report needs to be completed by Monday morning. Could you stay behind till 8:30 this evening so we could both complete it together?
No, I can't stay behind this evening. I've got a party to go to.
Well, this report is really, really important, and it needs to go to the directors by Monday morning.
I know that the report's important, and I have this party that I really have to go to.
That was really well said. Okay, let's practice a couple of times. Your voice was very clear. You acknowledged me, and I can't then argue back with you when you've acknowledged what I've said. Okay, so we'll just have a couple more runs. So Laura, this report is about our figures, our projections for next year, and if I don't send it in time, I'm going to get into real trouble.
Yes, I know it. You may get into trouble, and I do really have to go to this party this evening.
Okay, backtrack a little bit. When you're talking about emotions, it's not. Then you're not coming across as sympathetic. Okay, so when you're repeating what the manager has said, stay with the facts. Okay, so when I said this report needs to be out by Monday, it's about the projections for next year.
Right.
Don't hook into my emotionalness. Okay, does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay, so let's do that line again. Laura, this report is really important because it's going to project the facts and figures, and I don't want us to get into trouble.
I know it's a really important report for the facts and figures for the company, and I really do have to go to this party this evening.
Well, Laura, you're my favourite staff member, and I know I can trust you.
You can trust me, and I do have to go to this party this evening. It's
Well,
really important to me.
Okay, that's really well said. Yeah. Well, there isn't anybody else I can turn to about putting this report together. I'm relying on you, Laura.
I do definitely have to go to this party this evening.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Thank you. That was really well said, because you came across as with so much conviction that I knew after a while I couldn't sway you. So that was excellent.
It's quite difficult to do, and I guess it just takes some practice to
Yes.
feel more natural over time.
Yes, yes. And my suggestion is, when you are practicing new techniques, practice with people that you feel comfortable with, so they can give you feedback as well. So talk to your friends, talk to your family members, and say, can you just do this role play, a bit like what you've done with me? And that will then give you the confidence to then approach what we call the more difficult areas around assertiveness. You did very well. Thank
If
you.
you do not learn to say no, unfortunately, people will consume your time. People will give you all kinds of projects, and you'll be unable to complete all the projects in a timely manner. So we need to learn to say no. Again, just like all of you, I have the same tendency. I have difficulty saying no to bosses. Again, I was brought up in Afghanistan and Pakistan, so the cultural conditioning that we receive, we don't like to say no to bosses and superiors and elder people because of respect, right? So unfortunately, sometimes that works against us in the American or the European society. So we need to learn to say no in a respectful manner and acknowledge the other person's request by repeating it back, but also explaining why we cannot do the job, why we're saying no. What I recommend, again, is to be assertive. Practice saying no for the sake of practice. Again, practice with friends and relatives and those in the classroom in a professional way. Use the broken record technique, especially with your superiors. So it is helpful to use this consciously, improve your skill, develop your confidence, and there's no reason to feel emotional about it. So what do I get from being more assertive? Well, it enables you to obtain more of what you need and want in life. It's a skill that you can use both in personal life as well as in professional life. It helps you minimize stress, frustration, and resentment in your relationships and interactions with others, whether it's with your spouse, whether it's with your children, whether it's with your parents, or whether it's in the workplace with bosses. Assertiveness helps you have a stronger relationship, a better relationship with everyone. It helps you to take more risk in more of life in general and ask more of life in general. It adds to your sense of autonomy, to your freedom, and to your self-confidence. And you can definitely gain more respect from others for being direct, being open, and being honest with them at all times. So assertiveness contributes to your personal success, and it helps fulfill your career and life ambitions. Be gracefully assertive. What is graceful assertiveness? It is about creating a comfortable environment for discussing very difficult concerns while focusing on the issue, not necessarily the person, because it is not about changing the other person. It's about changing the dilemma, the conflict, something that is causing the conflict between you and the other person. So graceful assertiveness is about saying the truth with compassion at the right time in the right manner. It is about speaking without putting the other person in a defensive position. Graceful assertiveness in leadership is about being genuine. It's about risk-taking and rewarding others for doing a good job. It's about adapting to the person in the situation. It's about being creative in creating win-win outcomes for all parties. It's about being energetic, focused in understanding, as well as listening first, learning, and then leading, if that is what is needed in a given situation. So assertiveness skill development requires clarity, training, exercise, and consistency of the skills that you need on a regular basis, every single day. Just like martial artists practice every single day, runners run every single day, you need to do the same thing with assertiveness as well. So what is the best vitamin for assertiveness? In being a cultural ally, in intervening when we see other people being mistreated? Well, if there is a vitamin, it would be B1. Why would it be B1? Why would that help you be a cultural ally or be assertive? Because B1 basically means be assertive. In other words, it's a skill developed by practicing every single day. Be assertive with your children, be assertive with your brothers and sisters, be assertive with your parents, be assertive in the classroom, be assertive with your bosses, but be assertive respectfully, respecting the culture, respecting the individual, respecting the department and the profession, but always be assertive. So it's a skill you need to police, evaluate, and improve your assertiveness muscles every opportunity that you get. You can manage your own assertiveness development process, and I wish you total success. So thank you for having me for this presentation. I hope the session has been helpful for many of you. Hopefully you can develop the skills. Now, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, we can go ahead and talk about it for a few minutes.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to you, Dr. Mujtaba. We are very grateful to you, and we are very grateful to our colleague, Madam Nayyar Sultana, who introduced you to us. And on behalf of my department and my faculty, I want to request to you, please, we are looking forward to you, join to you in a future, and please keep in touch with us and keep sharing your experience, knowledge, and information with us, with our students. It will be very helpful for us, and please share any opportunity regarding our faculty members, our students, and regarding our department. Please do share with us. Thank you so much for joining our session. Thank you. Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
So you all have a great day.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Bye-bye. Inshallah, we'll see you in the
Bye-bye.
future.
Allah Hafiz.